Okay, Dr. Rob, we've got some questions for you.
Good. Let's get started.
So, the first one is, I've been in recovery for a year now, and I'm running into some questions I've been trying to find the solution to. When I first began recovery, I had an aversion to the 12 steps due to my trauma surrounding addiction. I found Refuge Recovery and what it is known as Recovery Dharma now, and I found it very helpful in gaining mindfulness. I switched from there to 12 steps because I wasn't able to get enough structure from it during that time. Now, being in 12 steps, I have developed a certain aversion to the process and want to switch back to Buddhist approach to recovery, but I want to make sure I'm not making these decisions avoiding the word required to recover. I just struggled living in the Bible buckle and finding the true spiritual healing. I found a lot of need to recover. Am I wrong to switch back, or should I be sticking to 12 steps? I'm a little lost at the right direction to go. I found a lot of spiritual healing in the Buddhist recovery program. Sorry, my text got sent accidentally before I did it. It's all good. So anyway,
Well,
so the gist of it is,
oh no, I heard all that.
oh, okay, all right.
I guess my question is, why can't you do both? I mean, I think that I think personally, I think Tam will agree that there's something about the process of the 12-step programs, the way they're laid out, the way they're organized, the way the environment is structured to keep you safe, but also give you support. And if you're doing a pretty good job of following the rules, you can really get well. And I think that I know, no matter where you live, that there's no one in any 12-step meeting who's going to tell you with any justified nature what you should believe around your spiritual life. And, people have heard me say this before. Tammy's heard this. I'm not a big G God person or religious person. It took me a while in the 12-step rooms too, but what I came to see as meaning that power greater than myself was simply the people gathered together who knew more than I did, who as a group had more experience than I did, and beginning for me to see that it's the connections we make and the healing in those connections where our spirituality takes place. If you're a better person or a more healed person because someone helped you, someone showed up for you, that's to me the 12 steps in action. And God in action. So I don't understand. There are many Buddhists who work 12 step. There are many, I think there are many ways to work the 12 step. And if that word is an issue for you, I think you can be very clear in your meetings what it means to you, and you don't want anybody selling what it means to them. And what I hear underneath that is maybe a little issue of boundaries. Like, can I hold on to myself and my beliefs in the face of situations that might be not mirrored exactly to what I believe? And, if you can hold on to what you believe and make use of the 12 steps, I think it's a great thing. But I also wouldn't let go of the fellowship and support you have in the Buddhist recovery. Why not do both? That's my thought.
And I really agree. And I have been in meetings where people are pushing a certain version of whatever the God of their understanding is.
Right.
And fine that they share what it is for them, but that does not mean that I have to accept that as, and I got to tell you, for me, I grew up in a certain, really Bible Belt kind of area, and so my concept of my higher power and the God that I choose to believe in is radically different than what I grew up with, or even what I had in early recovery. And I too had some, issues when I first got into, I was distant, and I've woven things back together again. But it was always what was right for me in the moment. And so I think, Dr. Rob is right on with, if you can hold your boundaries, but also give yourself some freedom to explore things. And for me, if I was bumping up against, I have some trauma around something, what do I need to heal that? Because I don't want what I really believe or find to be true and meaningful to be caught up and influenced by stuff that I think is between my ears. So,
Right.
So I would invite, like what you're bumping up against. Anytime I bump up against something, first of all, fodder for therapy. Oh my goodness, it was that's what I took to therapy. It's like, I'm struggling with this, and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to work through that because I didn't want that to be an impediment. So
Right.
I love that you're asking these questions and you're seeking, and I think that's great. And, and even in the 12 step, there are different groups and there are different people, and you can outgrow a meeting. It can be like, if one is really kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you'll know in your gut if this is the right one. Get some get some feedback on things. I hope you have a sponsor. I hope you've got some people that are helping you and guiding you so that they can help you go, yeah, it feels like you're just trying to bolt, or, well, that person in this meeting is, a little bit more challenging. And I'll even go so far as to say the people that I've had the most challenge with also gave me opportunities to work on myself, patience, tolerance, and respecting other people's, places where they are. They get to be where they're supposed to be. You get to be where you're supposed to be. So, but thrilled that you're here.
And I would add one more thing, which is this famous expression that we use over and over again, and I think makes it possible for so many people to attend those kind of groups who might have a little issue here or a little issue there. Take what you like and leave the rest. Get the spirit and the energy and the focus that they've got in those meetings. And if you don't like the way they talk about the religious piece, then just don't talk about that. Focus on the good stuff. Take what you like and leave the rest. But recovery is additive, meaning we do move on from one thing to another, but it's almost like adding another tool to our skill set. I wouldn't let go of the ones you've learned, and I wouldn't say that the one you're going to is the only one. There are many, many paths here, but the more the better.
And for those of you that are just joining us that haven't really dipped your toes into 12-step, 12-step is not religious. I hear that all the time, but true 12-step is not religious. There's a chapter to the agnostic. I mean, it's very much, your higher power, good orderly direction. There's lots of different things, but it's just.
Well, but let me say, Tammy, just to be clear, there are some parts of the country and places where the word God in the meeting is assumed to mean what we all mean by God in our neighborhood or how our church, or sometimes in some places, people do run into confusion, not the people in the meetings, people who are running the meetings, with, is this a place where it is for everybody, or is it really just a place for, and hopefully when that happens, they get redirected, because that's not the purpose of that. This is for everyone, no matter what your beliefs.
Correct.
But I can understand being in environments that are a little more, if you're living in a certain part of the country, you might hear more of that, but that doesn't mean it's really tied to the work. Here's an idea, and I'll stop. There are a lot of 12-step meetings online, and I would suggest going to some, because if you get a chance to go to a meeting that is not in your neighborhood, from a completely different part of the world, and you get to see how people are talking about these issues there, it might make it more comfortable where you're doing your work. It's just a thought.
I'm putting the in the rooms in the chat. So those of you that want to take a look at that, great. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the questions. This person has someone, their partner that has, in a fairly recent time, returned home after attending our program, and his aftercare plan asks that he set clear boundaries and cut out toxic relationships with friends, which included some coworkers. I waited for a while for the dust to settle and then followed up with him this past week. And he told me he discussed it with his therapist and they decided it warranted further discussion. We discussed some of his friendships, and I listed some of the, in particular, that were non-negotiables. Despite my disappointment that none of my requests or boundaries have yet to be put in place, I agreed to continue to wait for him to work through this with his therapist. The very next day I found out, following a flight cancellation while traveling to work, he decided to redirect his flight to see a non-negotiable coworker friend and spend the night with this person. I am very upset, as to be honest, it felt like a slap in the face. He admitted the following, that he broke his alcoholic sobriety with the friend too.
Great.
So, well, I guess this is continued, so hang on. So, this is a long one. So yeah,
I know it's hard when you have to negotiate the page. Sometimes it's hard to read the question. I know.
Following my discovery of this visit and confrontation, the rationalization and justification ensued. He hasn't cheated on his partner for a while. I think I could try to make this relationship stronger. Told me it felt like nothing had changed. I needed to see in person. At this point, I'm exhausted and hurt, and he seems to prioritize this friendship and link to his addiction over me. And I'm at a loss as what to do and to see him and how to get him to see my perspective. I have asked that we have no longer communicate and each focus on our own healing. My question is it unreasonable for me to expect these boundaries with his friends to be in place already? Do you think you have other suggestions on how to approach this?
Tammy, what is the nature of this relationship? Are they married?
It says my partner. So
okay, do they live together, do you think?
I don't, that isn't clear.
Because at the end the person said something like, we're not talking while this is going on or something, but it sounds, I mean, if most people live with their partners or are in close proximity, so Then this becomes a more general question, I guess. Do you want me to start responding, Tammy?
Yes,
or would
please.
you like?
No, I think it's, yeah. So
Well, look, if you're in a committed relation, so I guess my question is, what is the nature of your relationship? If you're in a committed, monogamous, dating or marital relationship, and this person is acting out, by the way, you don't know, I want to say this because it's absolutely true, you have no idea what his therapist said. And I actually think his therapist, he probably never discussed it with his therapist, knowing the people I work with, or his therapist probably said, I think you should take the guidance of your partner in this because she's the one who's feeling really uncomfortable, and he just didn't do it because he wanted to do what he wanted to do. See, I think what you've got to think about is all bets are off here. He's been lying, he's been acting out, all bets are off. You are now in the power position about how you want to run your relationship. So, and I'm sorry to say these kinds of things, but at this point with treatment and lies, and now he's acting out, for me, it would be, I don't think we're going to be able to continue our relationship unless there are certain things in place. And quite honestly, and I don't always push treatment, but this is a guy who sounds like he should be in treatment. We run a treatment center here in California. I'm sitting here today.
He's saying they graduated from our program.
Okay, so then he needs to come then. Okay, no, or come back. What I would recommend is getting us on the phone, because we're still willing to be involved with him and his therapist and you. And why don't we all sit down and say, well, let's see, this is what we discussed in treatment. That was only X number of weeks ago. I'd be curious whether this is someone who left after 2 weeks or stayed the full amount, because most people will stay for 4. So did he stay for the whole treatment? And if he didn't, does he need to do the other 2 weeks that he didn't want to do? We are a 2-week program for people who are really in a good place and ready to move, but they got to take the work that we're doing and move with it. And if they don't, then they probably need to be here longer. And a lot of people stay 4 weeks. So all I'm saying is that clearly something is wrong. And I don't know why you as a spouse feel in any way like you need to ask permission to be angry, permission to set boundary. You are being abused. You stood by while your partner went to treatment, and then they came back, and now they're lying to you, lying to their therapist, or lying about what their therapist said, and seeing other women or men or whatever they're doing. This is I'm out of here time in my world, or I'm out of here unless you do A, B, and C. I've put up with this stuff long enough. So I am just concerned, and Tammy, I say this to you, about the partner who feels like, who's being abused, in my opinion, at least from what I was heard here, who's saying, I'm not sure if I have the right to say that I don't want to be abused anymore, because that's sort of what I heard. So do you have any thoughts for this?
Well, it says, my question is it unreasonable for me to expect these boundaries with his friends to be in place already?
No.
I was going to say, the aftercare plan was really clear. You need to stop all those things, and he chose to disregard all that. So I get asked all the time, what are the statistics for people, that come to the program? And we don't have that. And
in terms of how long they're sober?
Yeah. And I always say, who knows? You can't really get those. But I said, right, for the people that follow the aftercare plans, I have to believe it's 100% or really close to 100%. For people who have complete disregard for their aftercare plan, this is what happens. Like, this is a perfect example of what happens if you don't.
Right. And I want to add to what Tammy just said. If there's something in the aftercare plan about him changing some relationship at work, and he decides that he doesn't want to do that, that immediately for you should become a big red flag. Because when we work with people, thank you for reminding me he's been through our program, Tammy. When you come through treatment, we know you. We know all your crap. We know all your BS. We know all the ways you try to pull the wool over other people's eyes. And we set that plan up specifically so that if you do these things, it'll be much harder for you to get in trouble with the people you love. If they start taking things back from that plan, really, we're not rigid, but we're saying to the person who leaves our treatment program, at least for a couple of months, just do this. Go to these meetings, see these people, don't see those people, because we know what works. And for them to go home and not only not do that, but for you to end up feeling like bad that you want to hold him accountable to the work that he was asked to do, makes me sad. And it makes me think that maybe he underplayed to you the degree of importance everything that we work with them on about how they're going to live their lives after they leave is. Because if he's minimizing stuff like this, I can tell you none of us ever would. So he's backtracking and he's backpedaling, and that's bad for you and bad for the relationship. There can't be anything that has changed that profoundly in a few weeks that he's changing all the rules. And if any of the rules change from that plan, I would say, I want to go into therapy with you and discuss this with your therapist because you were in treatment. This is what they said to you. And now you want to do it differently. I don't believe you. And guess why? Because you lie to me. So I would definitely be, if I were you, on the I'm grieving this relationship side because this person is not able to show up and value it in the way that I need to feel valued. And you have every right, especially after waiting for someone to go through treatment and all that, to expect that they're not going to lie to you, manipulate you, and pull this kind of crap now. And if they are, then what kind of person are they? And why did they come here? And what was the point of the treatment? People slip, people act out, but for him to pull you into a whole lot of crap and wrap it around your fingers and expect you to figure your way out of that, that's on him, not you.
Yeah, and he broke his alcohol sobriety, so
Right.
he intentionally chose. He redirected a flight to go do this. So this wasn't like, oh, I just happened to bump into this person. This was so intentional. Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm 100% with you. Okay, should we do the next one?
Sure.
What does a successful addiction recovery plan look like? Is individual therapy enough? SA husband feels he's doing all he can or should, though I feel like there should be more, such as 12-step. Your thoughts?
Well, I think this varies from person to person, but in the beginning, in other words, someone first starting out in early recovery, I think individual therapy is really helpful in the first couple of months just to get a grasp of what am I dealing with. Let me read some books. Let me get filled in. I think it's really important to be going to some kind of group, whether that's a therapy group or a 12-step group, at least a couple of days a week. Like 2 days a week in 12-step, a day a week in therapy group. Ultimately, I believe, and I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure we're right about this, that addicts will do best in group therapy that is accompanied by individual. But the reality is, for addicts in the first year or two of recovery, we need much more our peers to hold us accountable, to challenge us, to confront us, than we need to have this person therapist that we see individually that we think is going to heal us. I tell this story a lot. I'll just tell it right now. When I first had a physical therapy activity, I went to physical therapy in my 30s. I had a sore back. And I was really ready for physical therapy because my back really hurt. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to this physical therapist and they're going to make it all better. And you know what happened? I went to physical therapy and they did some, manipulations and then they said, now next half hour of this session, we're going to have you work on all these exercises. So when you go home at night, you can lie down on the floor and do these physical therapy exercises. And I looked at them like, what? I thought you're supposed to fix me. You're the therapist. You're supposed to do whatever you do with your fingers and I'm supposed to be better. I never occurred to me that I would have to do any work like exercises and strengthening muscles. And no. I wanted the doctor to fix it. And I think this can be sometimes for addicts a challenge in individual therapy. Individual therapists, we are really attuned to wanting to nurture and be caring. And we don't always move in a confrontational, challenging way. And the group is a much better place for people, especially addicts, to have other people show up and say, dude, you're full of crap. And so the ideal aftercare plan would, for me, once someone is beginning to deal with this, would be individual therapy, group therapy, and going to twice a week 12-step program. That would be, so 3 times a week they're in some kind of group and 1 day a week they're in therapy. I think that'd be a great start, more or less. Tammy, do you have any feedback?
I think that's not enough. And I'm going to tell you why. Because so with addiction, my experience, and I've been around the block a few times, is that if I wasn't planning it or doing it, I would, I was fantasizing about, like, so much of my day was focused on my addiction.
Party.
Yeah. So if you go to a 50-minute session with your therapist once a week, and then you go do a group therapy session and say that's an hour and a half or 2 hours, and you go to maybe 2 hours of 12-step a week, you still have lots and lots of hours that were otherwise in a negative way, taken up. So filling those with positive recovery things. So here, and this is me being me, but when I said my SA husband feels he's doing all he can or should, that's how I read it. Oh, I'm doing the best I can. And I'm going like, hell no. If you aren't as actively pursuing your recovery as you did your addiction, you're not doing enough. I mean, that's just me. But the people that I have found that have made it work are the ones that they are actively engaged. And it feels, unfortunately, at least initially, like somebody who's really getting into recovery, you feel like you've lost them to recovery, like you lost them to addiction.
Right.
Trust me, that's okay. just give them a little space, because if they get that solid foundation of recovery, they're going to come back, but they're going to come back a sane person, or more. It really sets the tone for things. So to me, when I read this, I read it with a little wimpy, oh, I'm doing the best I can. I don't buy it, but
No.
Yeah.
And I would say, are you putting as much energy into recovery as you put into getting laid? That's always a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
But I also want to add to this that the number one reason that people slip in their recovery or relapse is failure to do a lifestyle change. And yes, it's about meetings, and yes, it's about groups, and yes, but I think it's also about, I only work 7 hours a day, not 12. I'm home at a certain time, and I'm with my family for dinner. I get up in the morning and I have breakfast with my family. It's about being in your life, showing up on time, not overworking, resting. It's a whole way of it's basically saying, I've been ill and I really need to take really good care of myself and my family on every level. So to me, I don't think it's only about they got to do this and they got to do that. I would want to be seeing someone say, oh God, I have more work than I can do at work, but I'm going to leave and be home on time, because it's more important for me to mellow out, see the family, go for a walk, and then go to a meeting than it is to work till 9 at night. And so I would be looking for signs that the person is prioritizing their own care and their family. And if you think someone's in recovery, they're going to be saying things like, oh, I'm really going to miss you tonight, but I can't wait to get that meeting and see those guys. And then they can't wait to go to the next one. I don't think good recovery sounds like it's grudging, like, oh God, I've got to go to another one of those meetings tonight. As Tammy said, poor me. Because actually, I think meetings can be incredibly enlivening and educational and supportive. And, he should be grateful that those opportunities are available to him rather than resentful that he has to go. So I think it's about their whole stance on the whole thing, whether it's a have to, or I can't wait to embrace this new way of living, even though it's hard.
Well, and, if you've got a commute, listen to a podcast on the commute. I mean, there are ways to get good recovery things at moments. It isn't just going to a meeting. I put in the rooms on there. There are live, there are online meetings. We have all the drop-in groups and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I hear people all the time talking about the podcast. You've got a 15, 20-minute commute or a half an hour commute. Listen to a podcast on the way coming and going. If you listen to those multiple times, you're going to glean something new every time, I swear. So there's lots of ways to interject recovery. It isn't just going to see my therapist once a week. So.
And I want to add one more thing. I think that, getting into life is a big piece of it too. So that, if one day if your husband suddenly started volunteering to help with your kid's sports team, like, even though it wouldn't be recovery or work, he is actually showing up for the family, doing things he didn't do before. That's a recovery act, to bring himself closer to the family, be more involved in family activities rather than spending another night working late. So it's a holistic thing. It's not just about any one thing, but I agree with Tammy. I would want to side with being more eager to do more rather than resenting doing less.
Okay, the next one. My husband is in his late 50s. He admitted to having some random encounters with men in the last 20 years and a live in-person relationship for 6 years with a man. He has also been with female prostitutes. He says he is a sex addict but not gay, even though he has been with more men than women. Is that possible? He says it was just about getting attention from anyone.
Well, this is a great question. I would suggest that this is a spouse?
Yes, my husband.
So I really recommend this. This is a hard movie to watch, but I don't recommend the addicts watch it because it's difficult for them on a variety of levels. But if you're a spouse, watch the movie Shame by Michael Fassbender. The reason I say that is when you see an active sex addict in motion, in that film, you've got a guy who's just desperate to have sex with as many women as he can. And then when he gets locked out of the situations he can't get into with women, he turns to men. Because for him as a sex addict, he just wants to get to the bottom line. So, I wouldn't say your husband is gay, because gay to me implies a whole way of living, but he might be bisexual. He might have interest in both genders and want to experiment in both ways. I don't think so I know a lot of spouses will come to me and say, I can't believe my husband's been acting out with men or whatever. My response is, I can't believe your husband's been acting out. Like, men or women, there's a more basic problem here. He's lying to you. He's cheating. He's not committed. He's breaking your heart. And if he's a sex addict, it doesn't matter whether he's into men or women. What matters is that he has integrity, he lives honestly, he respects his relationships. Look, if he wants to be with men, he should talk to you about it, you know? I mean, but going out and hiding and having a secret, any kind of life, is a life of an addict. And that's not okay, no matter who he goes off with. So does he have an attraction to men? You bet. Is it a solo attraction? Probably not, because he's interested in women. Is that why he does what he does? No, he does what he does because he's a sex addict. And it doesn't matter where he gets it, he just wants to get it. And if you want to see what that's like in the crazy mind of a sex addict, look at the movie Shame. It's painful, but you'll get a sense of it.
Okay. How do you recommend a partner reunite with their addict after they've had time at like our residential program, or probably any residential program? So what are your thoughts on that?
Don't have sex. So I can say that I think it's really useful when people reunite or come back together to not be immediately sexual. It's okay to be close, but not sexual. Hold hands, arm in arm, cuddle up, but no sex for a little while. And what do I want to say about this? Hold on, let me look at that question again. Oh, Tam and I have talked about this before. There is so much opportunity during this time to begin to explore your caring for each other and getting to know each other again, now that all this has happened. So it depends on where the coupleship is. If the coupleship is in a place of, I freaking hate him, he ruined my life, and this is all really new to me, and you guys are really still at the height of mistrust, then really it's mostly about the two of you negotiating your own recoveries simultaneously and checking in with each other to make sure that you're moving in the right direction until things are calm enough to start working with each other. But if you're in a really good place together and you feel like you're both making a lot of progress, then I would start with holding hands and going on dates and almost like you're just getting to know each other all over again. Because I think that to jump into the level of intimacy you may have had before is too much. You're different people, you've been through challenges, and when you're reuniting, I think it needs to be almost a new exploration of who you are together, because as you get closer, things are going to come up. You might get angry about something. He's going to feel, you really, here's a way of thinking about it. In some ways, the foundation of the relationship you built has been broken. And now you need to build a new foundation before you grow a new relationship. So in the foundation building part of a relationship, you're getting to know each other, you're being close but not sexual, you're being curious about each other, you're giving each other space. You know, it's almost back to beginning to date on some level, because you need to explore who you are together in this situation. When do you feel safe and not? When is he or she being honest or not? There's no go-to way to be with each other. A lot depends on how things are going.
Well, and I was thinking about the earlier one where the person, you know, I would want to wait and see, you know, is the person following the aftercare plan? Because gosh, if they are, that's going to help me build some trust with them. And, you know, but if I go, they're not doing anything on their aftercare plan, then, you know, then clearly why would you, how are they ever going to rebuild that solid foundation, you know, of trust? So I think, you know, I think what Dr. Rob said, take it slowly, you know, get to know each other. It really just, it's probably going to feel really awkward because hopefully, I mean, I hear this often is, you know, this is a different person. And I love hearing that. Well, it's a different person. And you know, you got to figure out who you are together again. So.
And by the way, it's not a different person. It's a new side, a hopeful side.
That's a better way to say it. Yeah.
But all the rest of the crap is still there. And so you don't want to be fooled by, but at the same time, you want to have some hope.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a better way of putting it. Thanks.
Can I say one more thing about the people who come back from treatment?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they come back from treatment so full of knowledge, so excited. So people come back from treatment almost in a honeymoon. We have that word about it, where they're a bit of a pink cloud, because you have to understand they've been here and we've been just nurturing and supporting and challenging and questioning and prodding and pushing, but always with love. And always, you know, it's coming to treatment is kind of like having the opportunity to be a little bit of a kid again, where you're, you know, we supply meals, we set the schedule and the structure, so they don't have to worry about a lot when they're in treatment. They're able to kind of really focus on themselves and the work. And so coming back into the world is taking on a whole lot of layers of responsibility, work, schedules, people, you know, that they haven't had to do. And so, yes, Tammy's right. Part of why we lay out a really clear aftercare plan is because when people get out of here or any good treatment, they feel like, I got this down. I know what I need to do now. and I feel really good. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh my God, I'm so lost. I feel like I never went to treatment. And the point here is it doesn't matter what they feel. It matters what they do. And that's why those plans are there. So if they're come home and they're all excited about recovery, well, great. They have a plan to follow. And by the way, everyone who goes treatment with us, their spouse should get a copy of that aftercare plan. So they know, and their therapist. So everybody knows exactly what's going on and there should be no questions. By the way, to all you spouses, I hate to tell you this, but I'm going to say it. Because sometimes us therapists, I want to defend my profession. I have had a number of spouses say, well, my husband's therapist told him. And then you know what? I found out later that wasn't really true. So I only say this because sometimes you guys will get really angry at us. Like, I can't believe the therapist let this go on when they know I'm at home, blah, blah, blah. It's sometimes your spouses don't tell us. Sometimes they lie about what we've said. Sometimes they manipulate what was said into a way that sounds and feels better for them. So I just think that here's a thought. If you're writing some important issue on my therapist, my husband's or wife's therapist said, then I want to hear it from that therapist. You don't have trust in this person yet. So I wouldn't believe the things they say. And if there's a radical change, like now I can travel, or now I don't have to say goodbye to that job, or now I don't have to see that. If there's a big change in what you see as a well laid out, organized, structured plan for their healing, I would really want to question why with the person who suggested the change. And so if your spouse says, my therapist said, talk to the therapist. Because I don't necessarily believe addicts are being entirely honest in their first year, for sure.
Agree. Okay. How do I tell if it is taking me a normal amount of time as a spouse dealing with my husband's sex addiction, or if I'm suffering from depression? We have been in the process for a year and it seems like I can find no joy in my life or move on.
There is one of the symptoms of depression is called anhedonia. It sounds like an old folk song, dona, dona, but it's not that. It's anhedonia. Anhedonia means the inability to feel joy, to experience joy or pleasure. So someone who is experiencing anhedonia is no longer having fun with their friends, but they used to. Or they're no longer having fun when they go out to play cards, but they used to. Or they no longer enjoy their job, but they used to. So things that brought them joy, time with their kids, whatever, it's just a thing to do. And I think that if you're experiencing globally, like in multiple areas of your life, not just in your relationship, but not a lot of joy, not a lot of happiness, I think depression is a very good thing to look at, because depression can be caused by really difficult circumstances that go on for a long time. And if you have been struggling with a painfully broken relationship for 6 months or more, that can turn into general feelings of not feeling good as opposed to specific to that situation. And that's what you might go see a professional for.
It would be, yeah, I 100% agree. Seeing a professional to check that, and some people just need a little help for a little while. Some people, it's a more chronic thing. But the other thing, what I'm not clear about, because you say dealing with my husband's sex addiction, but what I don't hear is my husband's sex addiction recovery. And like, I know that these are short things and all of that, but I also feel like sometimes people write and they're saying more of their truth in these little snippets, and so like, I'm going like, if you're dealing with, and there's that constant unknowing because he isn't in solid recovery, no wonder you are struggling and not finding joy. So a little bit of it is, because if, and really, if he's doing well with recovery and all that, then 100% get to someone who can help, truly diagnose with depression. But if he's constantly doing this and you're going, well, he says, I'm doing the best I can and I'm seeing a therapist. Dr. Rob does a group for clinicians, and I'm going to give you a little hint. A couple weeks ago, one of the therapists was talking about this group of people that were coming to him, and they were all relapsing all over. And Dr. Rob talked about, you're colluding with the addict against the spouse, and I thought that is so true, because the guys, this was a group of guys, the addict gets to go, but I'm going to my therapist. And that's why you got a little bit of my sarcasm at an earlier reading. It's because, well, I'm going to my therapist, I'm doing what I'm supposed to, but who's paying the price? The loved ones who are going like, well, he says he's doing what he's supposed to do, and he's with a therapist, and and there you are. And so I want I want to express my like take care of yourself. But
Right.
I really would like you to look at, like, are you feeling like he's, building that recovery foundation? So kind of take a look at that in the whole picture. And I hope you have support. My goodness, we've got the drop-in groups online, but if you need a pro-dependent aligned support therapist, email me and I'll help you find someone who can help support you in this process as well. So.
And I want to just come back to that one more time. There is nothing wrong with going to see a psychiatrist or getting evaluation, no matter what's going on in your relationship, because if you are depressed, even if he is struggling and it's causing some of the depression, you will be more resilient and better able to handle it and set boundaries and push the recovery forward if you're feeling better about yourself.
Yes.
So I would say get evaluated regardless, but Tammy's point is really excellent, which is, look, if he's coming home and you don't know where he's been, or he's not quite telling the truth, or maybe you're not sure if you're left feeling uncertain and unsafe during this period, even though he says he's working, you're going to be depressed and confused because, in fact, it's a little bit of gaslighting. Like, I'm working hard as I can, but the feeling you're getting left with at home is, I don't feel like a whole lot has changed. I think that would make anybody depressed.
So the next one, my husband is a sex addict and a crossdresser. Both have progressed. Is the increase in behavior connected? Are these two things different? Are these two different things? So this is a great one.
Great question.
Yes, to expand on.
So they are absolutely two different things in terms of where the desire comes from. Cross-dressing is a fetish, like, I don't know, some people are into feet, some people are into shoes, some people are into leather, some people are into panties, cross-dressing, whatever. These are things. A fetish is, let me explain, a fetish is when someone has taken an object and they sexualize it and becomes a part of their sexual life. But the object itself doesn't have any particular sexual value. So when I look at a pair of shoes, I think, do they fit me? I don't think, ooh, that looks like sex. But there's some people who look at women's shoes and are like, ooh, I want to rub myself all over that. So that's an arousal. That's an attraction. I look at a leather crop and I think, oh, do you have to size that for the horse you're riding? I don't know. But some people are like, I can't wait till someone hits me that. So these are objects that in day-to-day life don't necessarily have a sexual meaning, like a pair of shoes or a riding crop. But in this person's life, those objects have become sexualized and they have their own weight in terms of sexual arousal. So when he puts a dress on or he enters that world, he feels more sexually engaged, more powerful. It's part of what arouses him. That's not addiction. That is part of an arousal template. However, there are people who have shame about their fetishes, who want to do them in secret, who will only see it, who won't do them with a spouse, just want to carry them out with a prostitute or a sex worker. So what they're doing is they're acting out. They're going to see sex workers, they're having affairs, having sex with strangers in order to engage in the fetish that they don't necessarily want to engage in at home. That is acting out. I don't know if it's addiction or not, but it's acting out because unless you gave permission for prostitutes and affairs and all that stuff, so I don't know what all the pieces are. These can be complex cases, but I think a good professional, this is what I would do. I think you and your spouse need to sit down with a really well-trained sex therapist who understands addiction, who can help, because these are pieces that are very closely related, but they sort of need to be pulled apart. What is the fetish? And if it is acceptable to me, if it isn't part of me, how do I live it out in a way that doesn't hurt my partner, hurt me? Can I enjoy it? Can we enjoy it? Versus how I'm ashamed of this fetish and I hate myself for it, so I'm going to go do it over here where nobody knows about it. But then it's acting out. And is that addiction? If every time he goes and acts out, he's acting out a fetish? Again, I think these are things that need to be pulled apart. My big concern for you is lying, keeping secrets. His deciding I can only do this over here, so I'm just going to take it in secret and do it by myself without my partner. That's not okay. And honestly, the bottom line around all this is going to be, if you are able to enjoy sexuality with him and him with you, with him engaged in this fetish in some way, then it probably will work out. And if he feels that he can only engage in this fetish with strangers, or he wants to do it with men, or you're going to have to deal with that. And that may not be about sex addiction. That may be about what turns him on and his willingness to follow it. Let me give you one more example. I've worked with a lot of men who had a particular interest in a particular kind of sex, but they didn't tell their partner when they got married. And they didn't tell them because they were certain that if I tell my spouse I'm into panties, or if I tell my spouse I'm into this or that, they're going to leave. They will never marry me. And so unfortunately, what these men do is they decide to just not say anything, and then kind of like, but I'm just going to do this on the side when she or he doesn't know about it. And it doesn't work that way when you're married with someone. They're going to find out. And so, you know, there are situations where someone's been carrying out a fetish, doesn't really want you to know about it, doesn't really want you involved in it, is doing it regularly somewhere else. But it isn't necessarily an addiction. It's just that they don't see any other way to enjoy this part of them, and they kept it hidden from you from day one. These are all possibilities, and I really think these are complex issues that require a professional. Tammy can help you find one if you look, if you write her.
Yes. Okay, the next one. I recently disclosed my sexual fantasy template to my therapist in order to process related trauma. I am having a really hard time with the resulting shame and being known. Any advice?
Well, I mean, this is difficult because I admire your courage and willingness and curiosity to want to grow and share these very difficult things with a therapist. I mean, that's what we're there for. But if you're feeling very shameful, why did I do that? I wish I hadn't. There are really two things. So, I mean, one is, how was it received? What kind of support did you get? Do you feel completely at ease from the level of, I think I was heard and understood and not judged? That would be really helpful, because then we know that maybe some of what you're feeling is more going inside of you. But if you felt like the therapist doesn't understand these issues, or maybe they were like, I'm not sure how to handle that, or I can imagine you might have been left feeling like, oh, you know, especially if you're used to getting a lot of support and nurturing, all of a sudden you're getting questioning, that might be really uncomfortable and leave me doubting. So there are two questions here. You know, one is, to what degree have you gotten the right support from your therapist? And it may or may not be, you know, not every therapist knows how to handle something that's sexual, that's not familiar to them, and they don't always know how to deal with it. So I want to be really sure you're seeing someone and feel really safe with them. But your next step has to be going back to them and saying, you know, after I told you this, I felt all the shame. In other words, in a safe therapeutic relationship, your job is to keep revealing yourself. If it's safe and if you're getting support and you said this really, really difficult thing, the next thing you do is say how you felt about it and keep going with that, because that's how you release the shame. But only if it's with someone who you feel safe enough. So if it were me, and this had happened in therapy this week, like yesterday, I'd be on the phone with my therapist tonight. I just want, you know, I feel all the shame. I can't believe I told you that. You're probably judging me. You know, I just leave them a message. Let them know that you're in fear around all this. Maybe they're simply saying, hey, I don't judge you. I'm really glad you told me. I'm so proud of you, and we'll work on this, is enough. Or maybe they did judge you, or, you know, I don't know. But more information is needed, and you're definitely doing the right thing, which is reaching out and asking. I just think you need to reach out and ask the people in your world about this one.
Next question. Is it important for recovery that the addict know why that led them to their, let me read it again. Is it important for recovery that the addict know the why that led them to the acting out behavior?
Okay. So these are good questions, Sammy. I got to tell you that I certainly know, for me in early recovery, I'm such a thinking kind of person. I just really want to know every detail of how I landed here. I'll tell you the reality. I'll just speak for myself, and then I'll speak in general. I went to 12-step program the first time in 1985 with a really serious sex addiction problem. And I don't think it had to be at least 4 or 5 years before I got into really good therapy after that and was able to figure out where it came from. The fact that I needed to stop the behavior and learn how to stop the behavior and how to be more loving to myself and others, I was able to do that in 12-step recovery. What I wasn't able to do was understand the trauma, the abuse, the violations, the survivorship, what I had to go through growing up that led me to this. The reason it is important, and even when we do intensives and stuff, how do I say this? The most important thing for an addict to understand in early recovery is to recognize the signs that they want to go act out and how to not do that. That's really the most important thing in the very beginning, just to learn how to not do that thing I was really doing. And that can take a while to learn just how to recognize when I'm going there and find the way to not do it. It is not required for someone to know why they do it to stop. I think it is helpful for someone to go into therapy once they've stopped, because I know for many of the people I work with, the fact that we sexually act out is so shameful. We hate ourselves so much. We think we are the worst of the worst. How could we, really, even though we do it, we hate ourselves for it. And so I know a lot of clients are relieved simply understanding that they didn't end up being sex addicts because they're bad people. They didn't end up being sex addicts because they're sociopaths, but a lot of really painful things happen to them, and that this is a part of how they learn to survive very difficult circumstances growing up. In other words, it's really useful to find out that, yeah, I have trauma, and that has to do with why I do these things. So you don't think you're a bad person. You do them because this is how you learn to survive. That relieves shame. But to actually go into and understand and get underneath all of those things, I actually think it's better for someone to have a little bit of time in recovery and not acting out. Because you have to understand that an addict will reach for that drink or go out for the sex when they drop a pencil. Like, they have an upsetting day. How are they ever going to deal with stuff like trauma if they haven't even built up the support for not acting out and talking about difficult things? So it is a process, and they do go hand in hand. But I think the recovery piece is the container that holds the whole thing together. And I want to tell you this before I stop. We at Seeking Integrity here at our treatment center, we are only doing intensive long-term treatment. I did outpatient, see you once a week, see you twice a week, whatever, for years and years and years. All we do here is intensive work. We don't go into deep trauma exploration in this work, but we make sure that everybody who leaves understands what happened to them, why it happened, how it happened, and how it led to what they struggle with. But the resolution of that trauma and the working through of that trauma can take years. So awareness of it in the beginning, very important. Actually working on it in the very beginning, probably not quite as important. Hey, Tam, I just want to tell you I'm at 10% battery, and I'm at the office. So I probably will make the next 9 minutes, but that's probably about all I got.
Okay, we'll keep going. Okay, so to stay or go, what is the minimum a spouse should can I just before you leave that one, like you and I have talked, and we've had more realizations, gone deeper levels of, like stuff we're both in long-term recovery. Stuff has been made known to us in our continued journey and work. So like, first of all, there's no way I could have known. Second of all, I couldn't have tolerated it. And third, it's a journey, it's a path. So I've been given opportunities to go a little deeper as I've been able to tolerate it. I really believe, as I've been able to, look at that. So, gosh, no, wouldn't want to know everything in the first 10 minutes. I would have.
And I want to just second what Tammy said. I've been working on these issues for 30 some odd years. Tammy, I don't know, probably since she was 3, because she's only 30 now.
There you go.
But the point is that this is absolutely a process, and we get through the work piece by piece. Some people, I'm so sorry to say this, some people aren't ready in their process to give up their addiction until after they lose a marriage or after they lose a job. That's their process. Some people are ready to work on trauma right away. Some people really need time. So it's really specific to the person, but their ability to tolerate trauma work, I think, should lean into and be rested on their ability to stay sober.
To stay or go, what is the minimum a spouse should expect to stay with their sex-addicted husband after a year? My husband sees a therapist once a week, doesn't go to group. We are living apart and refuses to see couple counseling. I know this isn't right, but what can I communicate to him as a minimum expectation if he is serious? I don't want to control his recovery, but I want to set some boundaries.
I think you should start that one, Tammy. Because it does vary, there is no minimum.
Yeah. Any, I get why, people I want to know how many this, what this, and want it all spelled out in check, but what I hear is you absolutely have the right to and need to create safe boundaries for you. I said earlier, you need to do as much for your recovery as you did for the acting out. And what I hear you saying is he refuses to do this, he refuses to do that, and all of that. So it to me sounds like he's making it pretty clear what his choices, is like, I want to do the bare minimum that I can sort of,
keep you quiet.
Yeah, I talk all the time about people who go to meetings and worm a seat, and because you can go to a meeting and say, I went to a meeting, I'm going to my meetings. But if you're not actively working the program, if you don't know where you are on the steps, if you don't have a sponsor, if you aren't doing the deal, you aren't doing the deal. You're warming a seat. Right. So to me, and I would really get some support around this because, I'm reading this in a little, a blurb here. But to me, it doesn't sound like he's serious. And after a year of he's supposedly in recovery, you should be expecting to see some changes. And the sad thing for him is if you are not acting out and you're doing the bare minimum, you're not getting the tools to be able to live happy, joyous, and free. So he's really shortchanging himself as well as your relationship. So to me, it's really sad, but yeah, like I think you've tolerated, in my opinion, enough, and that's just my opinion.
And I want to say this to all of these spouses and addicts, but especially the spouses. I'm an addict. I will try to get away with as much as I can for as long as possible until I'm really ready to give it up. And and hopefully if I'm ready to give it up, I'm ready to do whatever I'm told and grow. So my fear is that sometimes you guys get strung along because the spouse, the person who's the addict, thinks that how do I say this? I have been doing this work for 25 years, and this is what I have found. 99.9% of people come into treatment or make a commitment to healing because they are in a crisis. They don't do it because they want to be a better person. They don't do it because they really love you and know better. They do it because they're faced with losing their spouse or losing their kids or losing their job or losing their self-esteem, whatever. So I do think for the spouse who's seeing absolutely no movement and is sitting around thinking, why doesn't he get it? You do have some responsibilities as well. It may be that you say, look, I need you to leave for a couple of weeks. I don't know that I want to live with someone who's not going to meetings, not working on the, it may take your saying, there's not going to be any more sex and I need you to sleep in that bed while we're in this house because I don't want to sleep with you. You have to set boundaries that let this person know you're serious. And just like with the addicts, words aren't enough, actions matter. For the spouses, actions matter too. I'm tired of you doing that. I don't want you doing that. You're hurting me. You're letting me down. Why aren't you doing more? At a certain point, I promise you, all we hear is wah, 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 and we don't pay attention to it. Sometimes you have to say, look, this is my boundary. I need you in therapy this many times a week. I need you in, I need you going to couples with me. And if you can't do that, I'm not sure I can be in this relationship. And I certainly don't want you to be in bed with me at night. It's amazing how quickly addicts can get motivated when they start losing things they think they have control over, like you. So rather than, for most spouses, I have to say, oh my gosh, he's not getting better. What am I going to do? He's telling me all these stuff. How about you guys saying, you know what? I've had enough of this. And I don't believe your lies. And I'm going to stand up for myself and take an action. And it's quite amazing how quickly things can move when you guys decide you've had enough. And those of you who've done that know that. And I'm not saying leave him, I'm not saying or divorce, but I am saying make it really clear that you're not going to be loving, supportive, kind, and passionate, listening, or even around if he doesn't start moving forward with you.
Yeah, well, you're already living apart. And, one of the things I think about is if a year from now, everything is the same, are you okay with it?
Right.
And if you are, that's fine. I got no skin in the game. This is your life. But I kind of use those things. It's like, if I'm not seeing any change and I'm kind of stuck in this little hamster wheel of this is all the same, is this okay? Is my life in a place where I can? And I know that there are some people that can't, for financial reasons, health reasons, lots of reasons, leave, and then living in a situation and finding support and joy from other places, and they make it work. And I think that's fabulous. So setting healthy boundaries, setting up connections that will support and sustain you, that's, you can find meaning however you look at it. I just, like my thing is, if in a year from now, if I'm in the exact same situation, things are exactly the same, am I good with that?
And to Tammy's point, write it. What do you want? Write it down. I would feel safe if you were doing this. I would feel safe if we were doing that, because you can be talked into or out of or around a whole bunch of things. I think you're having clarity on what would make you feel safer and better, and then saying this is what I need and it's non-negotiable would be a big step toward creating change.
And one of the things that, we've talked in some other webinars and things too about is, even if, like, this is what I really want. Like, I want to see us living back together again. This is what I envision for us. And I realize you can't do that now. And here are the steps that are going to need to be required. You can lay out a path of, like, here's how we can both do it. So it doesn't feel so like, oh my gosh, here we are. And there you want us to be there. Like, I can't even figure that out. I mean, I love that, Dr. Rob's talking about, write it out. And then even say, and here's a path where we can achieve this. Is this something that you want to? And if he goes, yes, and I'm willing to do that, great. And if he goes, yeah, no, I think you'll have more information, more data that will help you, process, where you're really at with a relationship. So
I just want to quick say, Tammy and I come to you from Seeking Integrity Treatment Programs. You can find us at seekingintegrity.com. We run workshops and intensive residential treatment for people with sex addiction and co-occurring sex and drug issues like meth sex, coke sex, alcohol sex. If you want to find more information, just gather a sense of where we're coming from. I have a podcast series called Sex, Love, and Addiction. It's really popular. I'm very grateful to say. I think we're in the top 45 of healthcare podcasts in America this week. So there you go. And you'll find me talking to experts on infidelity and affairs and relationships and addiction and all that stuff, sexuality. It can be really, really helpful. So Sex, Love, and Addiction is the podcast. And also seekingintegrity.com is our treatment center. We give away our time, Tammy and I, a few hours, well, several hours each week. We offer as many as 14 hours a week of free therapy groups, for you guys to drop into at no cost. This is what we do to try to support you, because we understand not everyone's going to make our treatment center. Not everyone's going to get to therapy. Not everyone's going to get to a 12-step meeting. But we are trying to offer you as much information and support as we can at no cost to you. And hopefully that's what we've done in the last hour. So thank you, Tammy.
thank you, Dr. Rob. I will.
Warm.
Yeah, and I will see you on our consult group tomorrow. So
You will. I'll be there at 11.
So,
Bye,
all right.
guys.
Bye,
Just wanna talk to
everybody.
your
Thank you.
therapists. Bye, guys.